Hello, everyone, and welcome to this coffee lecture, Searching Numeric Properties with CAS Newton. So before we dive into interactions and examples with CAS Newton, a brief explanation again of what the NPS actually is, some basic facts. So in the latest version, it has around 60 chemical and physical properties which are searchable with this method, which then translates into a lot of unit variants which are supported. Also, what you can do is you can search for absolute or relative tolerances for specific values that you put in. Core of this system is the numeric analyzer, which is an algorithm that is scanning English language text fields. So, for instance, title abstracts, English claims for a particular patent database, for instance. And that numeric analyzer will identify exact values and ranges, and then link them to respective properties. And those are made available for searching in specific search fields. In terms of the databases, there are NPS-ready databases. So for instance, the Derwent Patents Index and the collection of full-text patent files on STN. There is also a bunch of non-patent literature databases that you can utilize. So in the field of life sciences, examples might be CABA and the amalgamation of different technologies, which you find in the database PQ SciTech. Also for food, Agricola, FSTA, and then for engineering, examples might be Compendex, and certainly also you will find information, engineering-related information in PQ SciTech. So let me explain briefly the principle of the numeric analyzer, so the algorithm, and how that system is normalizing the data so that you as a searcher have an easier life when searching for numeric properties. So we have a text that might stem from an abstract, for instance, where you see different units and numeric values, which are relating certainly to particular properties. So we can have a look at a range, a size range that you can see here from 10 to 30 nanometers, a time frame of 6 hours, and a particular volume, an imperial unit in this particular case. Now, what this numeric analyzer is doing is identifying those numeric values and the units, and then associating them to particular properties. And in the background, what it also does is a step of data normalization. So typically, for most of the properties, it will normalize the data to SI base units, right? So in the back end, this is the normalization step that the system is doing. And that allows a user of the STN system to basically go ahead and put in the numeric search. So in this case, I'm searching for a range of 5 through 50 nanometers as a length, or a time frame of 360 minutes, or a particular volume in cubic centimeters in the respective fields, and then hitting on the normalized data in the back end, meaning you are independent in terms of the unit that you enter from what's given in the text. So I'm searching with cubic centimeters, but I'm actually finding the information as highlighted in the text. Finally, this is how the system displays that, although it is a different unit, right? So with this data normalization step in the background, and I think that's quite important and very helpful for this particular algorithm, you're independent of the units that the author utilized in the original text, be it a non-patent literature source or be it a patent. All right, and then certainly what we need to do to achieve the above hits in a meaningful context is actually to add textual context. And this is what a searcher then has to do. So for instance, I add particle size and a neighborhood operator to say 10A apart from the particle size should be my numeric information. Then milling a few synonyms related to my time, and a particular mill type related to the volume of that mill that I would like to find. So certainly this context has to be encoded with retrieval language, and that will be added with a neighborhood operator, like we did in some of these examples here. So that's the principle of how the numeric analyzer, the algorithm behind it, works. It's a deterministic system, meaning it is an algorithm that was intellectually created before the AI times that we have entered, certainly on STN as well, with the agentic AI search via CAS Newton. Now, in terms of the NPS-ready databases, if you would like to look up the list, well, this is the slide where on the right-hand side, you can see the databases where this feature is installed. But also, you can certainly go to the database section in the classic interface on IP Finder and then go to the clusters, have a look at the NPS cluster. And when you click on the info icon, you would see the list of supported databases for that particular cluster. So that is the most current information that you can always check. Right, let's shift gears a little bit and then move to CS Newton and have a look at a few cases. And I would like to start kind of at the very beginning and would like to receive guidance from the artificial intelligence here. So I'd like to ask the assistant to actually support me and enable self-service query building. So I'm asking here, please briefly describe how the numeric property search works and what's best practice to set up queries. Right, so I would like to have an explanation, potentially myself just execute it, but would like to learn how can I use it. And the agent comes back and then talks about, well, this is the overview. This is basically what the system is doing. How does it work? Starting with a few examples, but then also more systematically showing you the basic syntax pattern. The concept terms, so the context that you define, you combine it with a neighborhood operator, and then have a particular unit or range of units that you indicate, and then search in the related property code field. Indicating examples, and then also looking at the syntax parameters to more specifically talk about, closed range searches, open range searches, searching for the presence of any value, how would that work? And then identifying or giving you some more examples. Right, so that's already a good start. So thanks for that. I have an additional question to CS Newton, and that's that I would like to know how I can write small numbers using the E notation. So again, the system knows in terms of the training that we did, knows the relevant documentation and comes up with the correct syntax telling me how the E notation can be utilized if I would like to search for 5 nanometers, for instance. Well, I can put in nm for nanometer, certainly, but I can also search in meter, in the unit meter, and then just put in something like this. So saying 5 times 10 to the minus 9 meter, and search that in the length field. So if I would like to utilize this particular E notation, I can do that. And again, the agent is able to just tell you without executing and processing any searches. Right, what I'm showing here in the screenshots, just so you know, is the left-hand side of CS Newton conversations. The right-hand side would show the online or live transcript, but for our particular question, that is not relevant, which is why I'm not showing it here. And the system is not executing any commands since I'm just asking upfront questions. So that was my starting point. You can actually utilize it to get guidance from the AI without execution of any particular search. And that helps occasional searchers already to get an understanding so that I can do basic searches even within the realm of numeric property searching. Please note that this kind of quick start guide that you have generated with your own questions can certainly be downloaded to keep it for later use. So on the very left panel, you have the history of CS Newton conversations. And when you click on the 3 dots, you can download it. That will download the conversation itself and a potential transcript that was generated within that session. Let's move on and have a look at a straightforward search. So my prompt here is find patterns related to chocolate with a cocoa content of 40%. Use a numeric property search WO full text. The system understands that the PCT full database is the correct database to search for the full text on the SDN system. And it then puts together a query nicely identifying the right search field for percentage in the numeric property search feature. So that's correct syntax here. However, the combination of the context with my numeric property search is rather broad with the just general Boolean AND operator, right? Nevertheless, it's doing that, but then also finding that, well, the first results is actually not quite what I was looking for. So it realizes the results are off target a little bit and then refines proximities accordingly that you can see on the right hand side. So it kind of autocorrects in this iterative process and then goes on to show some of these results, analyze them to learn more about them. However, I would like to intervene, and ask the system to adapt the search in a few ways. So I'm not quite satisfied with that. So I'm telling it, that the term cocoa, so the material of interest, must appear within a maximum distance of 4 words from the percentage value. So it should be closely tied to the numeric information, in other words. And then the word chocolate or its synonyms must appear in the same sentence. So I'm giving it concrete guidance and adapt the search strategy. Yeah. And then it's, several steps in between, but it's adapting the search strategy and commenting certainly on that as well. So that's always a possibility. Finally, at the end of this particular result set, the system is presenting me with the top assignees in the field and also some sample high quality results. Something that I like to do when I interact with the search agent in IP Finder is to give it pre-search instructions. From the perspective of an experienced STN user, I think that's quite advisable. So 3 main aspects for me: you have more control over the agent. The research instructions will tell the agent how to search and not just what it should look into. Secondly, you will have better and more consistent results. The agent follows clear rules, so results are more reliable and repeatable. So that's a little bit, if you will, the fight between the deterministic nature of your instructions and the non-deterministic nature of such an agent that is powered by an LLM system. And then certainly it will also reflect your actual intent. So you guide the agent to follow your requirements instead of making its own assumptions. And this is why I think the pre-search instructions can actually be quite helpful. So let's have a look at a few that I put in here. I would like it to understand its role to support an experienced STN user. I defined a particular output format that I want to see, bibliographic information, and the keywords and context of my numeric hit. Ensure that the key terms appear within the same sentence. So I have a few proximity rules that I put in, another proximity for the numeric value and how to link it to the material of interest, search style, simple and compact. And very importantly, also ask it to first propose a search strategy and then wait for my comments before it goes on automatically. And right after that, I put in the actual question, which is I'd like to identify NPL, non-patent literature, related to indium phosphide LEDs emitting a wavelength from 900 to 1650 nanometers, searching the Compendex database. So pre-search instructions and the actual search instruction. So it's then is looking at a strategy and proposing a particular strategy in multiple steps here. I'm actually asking it to create a one-line query, which is doing nicely, identifying the length field, the numeric search, 4A apart from emission, wavelength, and then the material information related to the indium phosphide and my LED context. So I'm reviewing this, asking it to go ahead, which it's doing, and then finally, it's executing the search and presenting the answers. Again, what I'm showing here on those slides for this particular case is what we see on the left, which is the conversation with the agent and not the raw transcript, which will be shown on the right-hand side. Please note that CAS Newton is also capable of creating flexible output. So finally, I'm asking it here to say, create a CSV table of all 77 results with the following 4 columns. I want to see title, publication year, an identifier for the non-patent literature, and wavelength context, right? And so it will display the necessary field if it has not already done so within the current context window, and then it presents this CSV table that I can copy from the conversation with the agent and paste into Excel to basically create those different columns where I have the title, publication year, object identifier, and the wavelength context it extracted from the displays and presented in a table. So you can't do that probably with, I don't know, a set of 500 answers, because we have a limitation in terms of context window size, not in terms of compute or so, but in terms of that window size for every Newton conversation. But nevertheless, for a little bit smaller answer sets, that's actually a very nice option to get this specific output, if you will, that the system can put together for you. And the final example, I would like to demonstrate multi-database searching. here. Again, I have pre-search instructions that you can see here, several of which you already know. And then my particular task, find publications related to high entropy alloys with a density between 2 and 5 grams per cubic centimeter, perform a multi-database search in Compendex PQ Scitech, and remove duplicates. Please use the numeric property search the NPS search feature. So again, it will first have to create a strategy to present to me. So this is now the full view of the agent where you can see the conversation on the left and the query or the actual session on the right-hand side. So again, indicating that's the strategy. This is the rationale for it, and I can review it. And then if I'm happy with that particular strategy, I can say, please go ahead with your principal strategy and execute the search. And then again, on the right-hand side, you will see this panel being populated by the commands. Now, something that I want to point out is the fact that you can also interact with that system on the lower right-hand side where you see a prompt. So in the right panel, you can enter your own commands. So in my case, I know that the system will only display a portion of the results because otherwise we would reach the context window limitation quite quickly. But here in that case, I say, no, I want to see the rest of these 33 results that it obtains. So please also display 11 to 33 for me. And I just put in that command. So I can put that in, and then the system is just executing this, and I can continue the conversation in the same context window with the agent, right? So it's displaying the information I was asking for, and then I'd like to have a refinement saying that I would like to have isolated publications that mention temperatures above 1000 degrees Celsius, yeah, relating to thermal stability that I want to see evidence of. And please remove the duplicates. So it's acting on the previously obtained L number and then nicely identifying the right temperature, putting in the correct values, the degrees Celsius in that particular case, doing the duplicate removal option, so removing the duplicates between the two non-patent literature databases. And in the display format of my choice is displaying all of the answers in that particular case so that I have all of these 6 answers. Please note, whenever you have this blue box on the left, which is showing a command that Newton is discussing in its conversation with you, you can click on those blue boxes, and that will make sure that you jump to the location within the online transcript. So if I need to see more information related to my displays, for instance, I can easily do that just within that online session. Finally, that's the last slide. Just a few important notes related to CAS Newton. Each new question starts a new session, meaning the existing session history is deleted. Your existing L numbers, existing enum sets, etc. So that is being deleted so that it can always start fresh with L number 1 with every separate Newton conversation that you start. Secondly, as you've seen in my example, commands can be entered manually in the lower right-hand panel. So that is always an option. You can click on a command in the conversation, and then it jumps to the position in the transcript. Also, just important to remember that conversations and transcripts can be downloaded at any time. You will receive a zip folder, and that contains 2 files. One is the conversation, and the other one is the raw transcript. So one for the left-hand side, one for the right-hand side, 2 files that you will be able to download from the history panel on the left. And then finally, just to state and remind you that CAS Newton supports multiple languages, so you can certainly interact with that system in your own native language. You do not need to use English. It's also certainly answering, and so doing the analysis in the conversation in that particular language, whereas obviously it has to search the database with standard STN retrieval language and English, and knows that the database utilize English. All right, that's it for this coffee lecture. And I know that Rob tried to support me here in terms of any questions that came up in the chat. Rob, just a question to you. Anything that you would like to highlight? Anything that we still need to discuss?
Chat's quite busy, really, which is great.
Mm-hmm.
The one thing that's might be worth you addressing is when requesting Newton to do a numeric property search, is it possible to specify the field of the database, for example, the claims of the patents?
Yeah, that's a good question. So what you would actually have to do, and maybe I go back to a slide where I can show this. So if you would like to specify the field in which you would like to find the information, so it might be the claims or so, then what you would have to do is you would have to add the field refinement or the field code to your context. So let's have a look at my particle size question here. So 10A particle size 10A apart from my numeric range, you would add the CLM fields or /CLM next to, would add it to the textual refinement to your context, because that would tell the system, okay, search the text in that field. And then since you're using a neighborhood operator, proximity operator, it would automatically bind the numeric property search to only retrieve in close proximity within that field. What you cannot do, and this is why I'm giving you that explanation, is to refine again the numeric property search field itself. So that stays as it is. You would do the refinement on the textual level with the context, and that will then link your search to the respective field or fields that you are interested in.
Very good, thank you. We also received some great feedback that it would be quite nice to put a save your standardized prompts that you use to set up your question, so you don't have to keep retyping them in every time.
Yeah, that's a good point. We are discussing that with product management, and we'll take that back. Maybe a setup option in the settings or so. Yeah, that makes sense.
And perhaps you could also clarify if it's possible to go backwards and forwards from the classic panel on the right to the Newton on the left. Does that work okay?
Yeah, classic panel. So what you would have to do, actually, let me go back to the last example probably, so that I know what we are talking about. So I think what is important to note here, first of all, is that I would advise to stay within CAS Newton for a particular conversation. So, right, I have my conversation, Newton is executing the commands. Now I can enter my own commands on the right-hand side, so stay within that session if I would like to manipulate that, and later on at the end can download the transcript. But my recommendation would be to stay within that Newton session rather than going backwards and forwards with the classic interaction. I'm saying this because when you move from classic to Newton and opening a new conversation, the system will just delete the existing L numbers. So this is why I would typically suggest to do that. Any further advice from your side, Rob?
So yes, if you want to interact with the sort of classical interface and Newton simultaneously, you need to keep this dual panel view open. If you return to the main command prompt, then you can't then return to the conversation.
Yeah, exactly. And also
exactly.
when you want to go back to a conversation at a later point of time, say, okay, I had this conversation yesterday or so. Remember, the SDN system is not a project-based system. So in that case, you can download the information from that conversation that you had, including the transcript, as I explained, but you can't go back and, let's say, reopen in that view that you see here right now, since it's still using the classic interface, if you will, but it's just a search assistant doing that on your behalf.
Yes. You can also conduct a search on the right side and ask Newton if it's understood what you did and if it can think of ways of improving it. It's very clever.
Yeah, that's also a good way of leading the conversation, maybe, or starting with a certain portion. So please make use of the fact that you can actually enter commands yourself, and that this will be part of the context window of Newton with which it can interact. Indeed, yeah.
Yeah, we just received the request that it should be easy to select a previous conversation. Yes, I think we recognize that feedback, right?
We do, yeah.
But at the moment, the system is literally the classical STN system behind the scenes, with kind of Newton as in the driving seat. That's the way to think of it.
Correct.
We did receive some questions about this is kind of blended between MPS and Newton. Can we search the data that's in tables in the original patent documents? And I guess that relates to what data is in each individual full text database.
Exactly, yeah. For full text databases, when we have OCR, the table content, then certainly the system is capable of retrieving that information. If that is a graphic only, then obviously not. But for some, it is OCR, and then table information in principle is searchable and also retrievable by Newton.
So at least from my past experience, that means definitely yes for US and possibly no for WO, depending on the document. Yeah. and a nice request for whether it would be possible to direct Newton towards the example section of a patent.
Yeah, I mean, we typically don't have a clear differentiation in terms of example segments of a patent. So that is not so easy to do, I would say.
No, might be worth some experimentation though. Play with that.
And please, looking at some of the questions, please bear in mind that this is a search agent in the STN system. So as you can see, the system is utilizing commands, classic commands, and steering the system in that way. It certainly has great capabilities then to analyze the displays, which I exploited when asking it to put together a table including the context information from the numeric property search display, which is great. So it can certainly analyze the displayed information. But on the other hand, it is a search assistant that is executing commands that it certainly has learned within our training, where we provided it with our own search instructions, webinar content, documentation certainly that we have internally, and our database summary sheets and our help section within IP Finder. All right, then I would like to thank everyone, and yeah, much success with IP Finder and CS Newton. Thanks everyone.